We may welcome to this Cabinet meeting, the 11th of April, 2023. Start by asking if we have any apologies for absence. I think we've got the whole Cabinet here, so no, and we don't do substitute members. Okay, that's fine. Do we have any declarations of interest from members of the Cabinet for any item on this evening's agenda? No, all clear, thank you. Let's go to the minutes. The minutes we have are of our last meeting, which was the 7th of March. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes? Do we have any recommendations for corrections, alterations? In which case, can we confirm those are agreed? Is agreed? Thank you. That's good. I have no particular announcements to make this evening. I've not been notified of any urgent business, nor do we have any reports, as far as I'm aware, from overview and scrutiny. So we'll move along to our first main item. This is item 7. This is the Planning Advisory Service, the Planning Peer Review. In a moment, Rebecca will make some introductory remarks. Then we have 4 speakers, Councillors Randall, Purser, Harris and Beardsworth. So Rebecca, over to you. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chairman. So LGR brought together 4 very different councils and 4 very different planning services, each with their own processes, capabilities, approaches, differing systems and cultures. And this was during a time of COVID emergency when the focus of the council was to get over the line as a safe and legal council. So there was absolutely no capacity for any work on planning prior to us becoming unitary. As an example, Northampton had real issues relating to staff retention, and as a consequence, there was a significant backlog of applications, and Daventry had not invested in technology a number of years in processing applications and was still largely paper-based. It became apparent immediately that this was going to be one of the more challenging services to bring together and to create a service we could all be proud of. It's a high-profile service with a wide range of service users and customers, each often having conflicting outcomes in terms of the results they want to see. In acknowledging the strengths and weaknesses of each area, it was key that we established best practice and that we therefore commissioned the Planning Advisory Service to help advise and assist members and officers in achieving our aims. This is a government-funded organisation who assists with planning reviews across the country. As you will see, we requested a warts and all critique, and whilst the vast majority of the issues raised were well understood, they did find some areas of particular challenge. This report sets out at Appendix A the full findings of the report, and with an action plan at Appendix B that I believe positively moves this. There's an action plan at Appendix B that I believe positively moves this service forward and in a timely manner. The action plan is already well underway and with some significant improvements already being delivered. In summary, post the review, we now have a very capable and driven permanent, a single IT system went live last week, bringing Daventry planning into the 21st century and fully online, an improved monitoring system, a restructure that has now been consulted on and will be put in place by the end of June. A new SIL team being part of this restructure, providing confidence going forward and looking at how we can provide a fully accessible SIL and Section 106 system for members of the public and parish councils to access. We'll have a draft of the single local plan, hopefully in 2025, which will be consulted on in October, reducing the overall time that a two-part local process would have delivered. And the plan sets out investment in the staff and opportunities to grow our own in response to the still challenging jobs market. As a result of the PAS review, we have an improving relationship with government, as well as town and parish councils. We have identified future opportunities to work with PAS in ensuring we do deliver a great service going forward. This is very much the start of the journey, but one which will go forward in a transparent and focused way. The PAS report also identified some challenges in respect of the delivery of the planning committees, but this will obviously be dealt with separately and will be the subject of future reports to the relevant committees. In summing up, I'd like to thank PAS for their support and assistance, but particularly thanks the staff for embracing the new ways of working and helping in developing the many work streams, and also thanking colleagues and users of the service for their patience to date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Let's move to our speakers then. The first of which on this is Councillor Randall. Wendy, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I found this report extremely concerning. It's worrying that there's a strong buy-in, but no responsibility, seemingly, to push it forward. They witnessed some very worrying cultures and practices at one planning committee, and this isn't a one-off. The chair should never have allowed behaviours like that to have continued. I hope you'll think very carefully about who you select to go on area planning committees in the future. We are moving to 2 area committees, and many assumed this would be a Daventry and South Northants together as one committee and Northampton to remain as it is. But it's looking likely that it's going to be a horizontal split, slicing Northampton in half. Many councillors and residents don't understand the logic of this. And if this is due to behaviours and bad culture, then is this the correct decision to make? Or does the administration just need to get their house in order? Town and parish councils were extremely unhappy. Why is that? Is it a lack of communication and involvement? It doesn't really state what it was. Parish and town councils need to be included in large development. Councillor Breeze recently praised the Monksmoor development in Daventry, but that was a development where the town council was very heavily involved right from the start. How confident can we be that SEAL and S106 are being tracked in a timely manner and be assured we aren't missing out on any funding? I understand that the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities has funded a 6-week deep dive into SEAL and S106. And when can we expect to see that report? In many meetings, I've sat here and I've told you how low staff morale is. And I've been made to feel like I'm making it up and stirring. And yet on page 22, item 22 on page 8 of the report, they found that morale was indeed very low. I hope that you really take on board the issues that were highlighted and the recommendations to improve the planning service. And when are we expecting to see the planning service working in a timely and professional manner? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Wendy. Next speaker is Councillor Purser. Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to continue with some of Councillor Randall's comments. This particularly shocking report, I think, for us to receive. Perhaps it didn't tell us things we didn't know, but that doesn't help. What the report does say is that we should be putting our planners at the centre of the service, and that we've still got organisational problems. And it makes me wonder what the shadow authority was up to and what transformation was up to during the first 2 years of the authority, because we seem to be at the point now where we should have been 3 or 4 years ago. This is very important because we have significant housing growth issues to manage. We have town centre regeneration issues, all of which planning should be absolutely central to. And my concern is that in this authority, planning is seen as a marginal activity rather than a central activity. We've got to get planning central to all that we do in terms of place. So my questions to the Cabinet Member for Planning are, why was there not a workforce management plan in place from day one of the authority? And two, is she now confident that planners within our planning service feel valued and supported in their work? And I'd like to ask the leader, has he got confidence that 2 years on in this authority, that we're in a position where the Cabinet Member for Planning can turn around this service so we have an excellent planning service for this authority, which is what we need? Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And our next speaker is Councillor Harris. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. My comments will be that clearly this was always going to be a complex activity. We had different practices, different activities, some online, some paper-based. Having said all of that, we're at a point now where the important factor, I think, is to gain acceptance that there are issues. Acceptance is key in order for us to actually move forward and improve and develop on the situation we find ourselves in. I myself have heard quite a lot of denials, and those of you that are familiar with the change curve won't be surprised that denial is often a key feature when receiving such news. Usually things like it's not us, it's someone else's fault. Who are these people? The people that we invited in ourselves to remind everybody to review our practices. So we must accept that there are issues and problems. And it's important that we move forward as quickly as we can from denial to get some form of acceptance. So for those that may still be stuck in the loop of it's someone else's fault, I would encourage them to accept that the world is not perfect in planning and we need to move forward. So we need to get a grip of what changes are needed. And I think we have some sense of what that looks like already. And particularly the desire to move to a different committee structure. And I think we need to be absolutely transparent about the reasoning behind that for everyone. There are other issues that sit around the system. And I'll give you one example, a live example in my ward, and this is about consultation. So there's a live application currently for access road and 3B8 sheds at junction 1 of the A14. That's a big development. One might say it's a strategic development, but in this particular issue, only one parish, the parish that sits closest to it, has actually had any notification of this planning. That's an example for me where we need to look more clearly and broadly at the way that things happen in planning. That's been dealt with, or the parishes have been notified so they are aware of this issue, but it signifies to me the example of where we might be stuck in an old way of doing things when in fact we should be looking more broadly. The report specifically talks about training for planning members. I would completely support that. I think we need to do far more for committee members. We now have the system live this week for Daventry. It's a completely new system for Daventry. I think we need to make sure that Daventry members, in particular ex-Daventry members, get some knowledge base and training on that, because it works in a different way. I think it might also be sensible to do something with parishes themselves from an accessibility point of view. But the key message for me is, please let's accept that we've got issues and let's do all we can to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Our last speaker is Councillor Beardsworth. Sally.
Thank you, Chair. I was so disappointed when I read this report. It's very damning, and it seems that we all need to be doing a better job. at supporting our staff and making sure that they know that they've got our support. It's been 2 years, and as previous councillors have said, you know, we've had transformation. Why hasn't this been helping in this situation? Planning is such an important job. We're told that people who sit on planning committees could sit on any planning committee, because as long as we understand the policies, you could sit on any committee. Well, why is it that planners haven't been able to be pulled together to do the job in hand? What is wrong with the situation that isn't bringing the planning, all the planning people together to work under one umbrella? And that doesn't seem to have happened. We have a huge backlog of work that people must be getting very, very frustrated about. I'm on a parish council and I've spoken to other parish councils. They just don't feel as though they're recognised or even taken into consideration, even when they put their views forward. And I know it was very, very important to you, Leader, and to Councillor Larratt, that the whole town was parished and the county, so that we could actually have that feedback from parish councils. I don't know how you could. It says certain things will be in place by April. We're April now. How are we on target to get these things done? I agree with what everybody else has said. People should be able to go into a planning department anywhere in this county and be seen by a planning officer if they need help to get something put through. And we just need to for people to be supported in their jobs, because if that's what they don't feel like. And I'm happy for extra planning training. You can always learn. It doesn't matter how long you've been on planning. Things change and we need to be kept up to date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. I'll bring Rebecca back in. Just if Rebecca doesn't mind, a couple of comments from me, because the first one's quite a crucial one, responding to Bob. Bob, I have complete confidence in the cabinet member in turning this process round, but I will also tell you that on a very regular basis, the cabinet member, myself, the chief executive and the director meet with the assistant director that's currently on, I think, a fortnightly basis. Planning has been a huge priority, having been, I think, a weak area for some time. I share your frustrations, and it really frustrates me that we are now where we should have been probably 2 years ago. Wholeheartedly accept that. And I think in an interim period, we saw staff lost, partly because they didn't feel valued, partly because they were ill-equipped, they weren't properly directed, motivated, they had no sense of vision or focus. I think we have all those things now. And what that meant was, with a huge demand at that time for planning staff, we lost a few to, you know, the more lucrative, perhaps private sector. And it's a long climb back out, but believe me, we are focused on it. I'll also reiterate a point that Rebecca did make, which is that we requested this report. A lot has been done, and the answer to Sally's question is the action plan is appended, so you'll see where we are now in terms of April. But we use a number of tools when we're working on an area. One is sending the auditors in, as we did to Home to School Transport a little while ago. Another is peer reviews, LGA, PAS, people like that. And we do that when we want to put as much possible daylight as we can on a subject, and that's what we've done with this. Now, of course, it leads to understanding what's the full extent of what's wrong in an area. Some of it reinforces what you know already. And of course, it then creates a political open goal. We're happy with that, simply because the right thing is to look at the thing properly and to take external advice, as we have done with this, and we'll continue to do that. And you'll see probably more peer reviews, more audit reports. And that's not just because we're trying to shy away from bad news, but it's where we're trying to find bad news and solve it. Sorry, Rebecca, jumped in there a bit, but hand back to you for any other points you want to sweep up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. There's a consistency in the response from the members that we've heard, and absolutely I recognise it. And I'll start to answer some specific points that were raised. But in response to Jonathan, I think that this shows that absolutely there is acceptance that there have been issues. And I don't believe that there has been any denial, particularly amongst cabinet and senior staff, that we have issues. Instigating the PAS review was to shine a light and to show that we are concerned about the way the planning service was heading. We knew that to develop our economy, to create our sense of place, to develop our plans, we need a good, strong planning system underpinning it all. it is absolutely a centre of what this council does. And I absolutely do not accept that it's a marginal activity. It is right at the core of West Northampton Council. But to go back to the speakers in order, Wendy, yes, absolutely a lack of communication, particularly with parish councils who I think were feeling very, very unloved. We've all been having issues with getting timely responses to emails. Parish councils were to a certain extent being blanked, and that was absolutely wrong. And I have been championing against that for the whole time I've been chair. I think that message is now got through, and that actually, although I couldn't possibly say that it's perfect yet, I think it is improving. And we have a comprehensive training program being developed for parish councils, members, and others. And some of them will be just for parish councils. Some of them will be for parish councils working with members, because as I discovered when we had a member briefing on the SPD, we included parish councils, and that was really, really successful in having cross-fertilization and increasing everybody's understanding of the issues. So there is a comprehensive program in place and absolutely recognise all the parish councils. On SIL and Section 106, there is money. There is no funding missing. There aren't missing funds. What happened was that the reporting systems of a couple of the councils were absolutely not up to scratch. And again, their systems did not sync. Getting that information together has been much harder than I think we envisaged a year ago when this really did start kicking off. But we are looking at systems that will pull the information together and be accessible. And hopefully with a click of a button, parish councils will be able to find the information they need in a timely manner. But that's a piece of work that's, I think, much bigger than any of us envisaged, but it is well underway, and PAS are helping on that. Bob, the shadow, there was no work done in shadow on preparation for planning, which I think is a very, very sad fact, but it reflected the fact that we were in the middle of COVID. We had to put off going into unitary, I think, by a year, as I recall, because we had to concentrate on so much of the government's agenda in dealing with the crisis. So there was absolutely no work. We were thrown together on the 1st of April, and the results sadly speak for themselves or don't speak for themselves. And yes, you're right, there was no, I think you've referred to a sort of staffing plan or a management plan that didn't exist. Since then, we've had issues with getting our officers in place, but we have now, and Steph really has got a grip on where that is going. Jonathan, I think I've answered yours on acceptance. I don't think I've ever been in denial. And I think rather now moving from denial and acceptance, we actually need to move to change. And that's where I'm hoping that things are moving now at pace, is to change. We've moved out of the acceptance denial. It is change. And Sally, I think our staff are starting to feel supported. That's the feedback I'm getting. They're engaging in the consultation. The churn has completely changed. We're not getting that turnover of staff. It's feeling more settled. I think being in the one building for Daventry and South Northants, although it was difficult to start with, I think that is now working. And the Northampton staff will be coming over in May, June time. And I think that will create a cohesive feeling for the whole planning service, and it will be one planning service. And with our program for staff for continuous professional development, I hope that they're starting to feel appreciated and delivering our service. So I think that pretty much covers everything, Chair, but I'm more than happy to take emails and queries from members as I have.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Anybody else, any comments or questions at all? The rest of the cabinet, anything to say on this? No, okay, in which case, excuse me, let me direct your attention to the recommendations at section 3. Just ask you to confirm your agreement to those recommendations, please. Is that agreed? Thank you. Takes us on to item 8. This one is with David, community grants framework. Some introductory comments from David. And then we have speakers as follows: Councillor Randall, Councillor Holland-Ellermere, Councillor Harris and Councillor Beardsworth. David, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, pretty straightforward report. setting out a framework that's clear to anybody who wants to apply for a community funding grant. I think it's all pretty self-explanatory in there. It details the principles and criteria that you would need to provide. And the framework itself will provide a consistent platform, if you like, both for existing community funding grants and any other current funding grants that may come through for the community sector. I mean, they could be, but this is just examples. It might be, for example, it may be public health would have some funding grants that they want to bring through to the voluntary sector. So these principles in this framework would apply to those applicants as well. So that would list, as it's listed in the reports, a need, reach, outcome, sustainability, value for money. Whether the applicant has got other sources of income, for example, they might have huge reserves. So why would they be coming and asking us for grants and things? So this framework just provides the lines on the page from which you can then make an application. And this will sit on our website. And this will be a fluid document to a certain extent because certain circumstances may change, et cetera, but very straightforward report. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, David. Let's go to our speakers. So first of all, Councillor Randall. Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I'm fully supportive of this document. The only concerns that I had is I spoke to the Daventry Volunteer Centre and asked them if they were aware of this report. I know Councillor David Smith sits on their board, so I assumed that he probably would have notified them and made them aware, but no, they didn't know it. They weren't aware at all. So I sent them across the report prior to this meeting, so at least that they had a chance to have a look through and read through it. And they did send some comments. You know, they were in favour of it, but their only comment was on the community funding panel, that there was no one from the voluntary sector on that panel at all. And she used to sit on the NNC grants panel. So she is a sector specialist. So she said maybe that could be something that could be looked at. We rely very heavily on the voluntary sector. And I know in the past, when they've only had funding for projects for 1 year instead of 3, it makes it they feel very unstable. Where if it were 3-year grants, that would be, you know, really useful. And the only other thing that I would just like to mention is it states there'll be a cross-party advisory group with 4 councillors. And as this is a cross-party, will there be one councillor from each group to make it a truly cross-party working group? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Wendy. Keith, over to you.
Again, I welcome this report. I think it's already been outlined. It's very important that with our voluntary community sector, that our grants are for longer than just 1 year, especially when it comes to planning and delivery capability for our partners. We do rely heavily on our VCSE sector, and as was pointed out to me recently at one of the council information days, I think one of the things we do need to be really looking at is promoting the partnership and collaboration between different groups, the VCSE, and the avoidance of duplication. They are crucial in delivering so many of our policies, and I'm really glad to see that the report aligns with our vision as a council, but we just need to make sure that it does exactly what it says on the tin, and that we do actually in practice do what we say we're going to do, and encourage the VCSE sector to have that common vision of making our area thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Next, Councillor Harris. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. I again would like to echo the comments of welcoming this report. It gives a great deal of clarity. So from that perspective, I welcome it. I think it's important that we don't do too much to complicate the application process. And I know there are additional criteria in here. Slight concern is that might prove difficult for some, but I accept the rationale or the need to have it. I think it's important that we can gain some clarity on the cross-party advisory panel as soon as we can, because obviously the sooner that this can get launched, the better, certainly for the voluntary sector. I think I'm going to be a bit of an echo when it comes to the multi-year application issue. It doesn't specifically outline that, and I think for some particular community groups, that would be a useful thing to specifically include, or at least have some clarity around. It also makes reference to timetable for applications and decisions. So it's referred to, but there's no specific in there. And I think, again, given that we are already in the new financial year, I think it would be useful to try and get a grip on that timetable as quickly as we can. One factor that's disappointing, of course, is a budgetary issue. We put in something like £18.1 million inflationary measures for the base budget, but this particular pot of money has not increased at all. So that I can see that being potentially a challenge. That's not something we can now address, but hopefully it's something that can be considered when we come to the next iteration of budgeting for next year. One particular issue for me, some of you may know that I've worked very hard in my ward to build a community transport strategy to reconnect a number of villages that have been without transport for some time. It's not particularly clear in here whether community transport will fit into this pot or not. I am aware, of course, that there is the UK SPF fund in the mix here as well. So clarity on that will be extremely important because, again, we're just about to get to the anniversary of that community transport approach in my particular area. And I can't tell you how much it's done for people in those villages that have not had any access for some time. And you won't need me to refer to the lapse, but I will do, because the connectivity or rural isolation issue is emerging quite clearly in a lot of those lapses where we have rural areas. So again, it's just some clarity of some specific issues there, and I'd welcome perhaps some clarity on those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. And finally on this one, Councillor Beardsworth, Sally.
Thank you, Chair. I too welcome this report. I think it's about time we've got things sorted out. The two things I would raise, well, there's three things I would raise. There's no representative from the voluntary sector. I've been on the community funding panel many times, and in fact I sat on it with Jane Carr, who was from the voluntary sector at that time, and her input was invaluable at that time, because you can't know everything that's going on everywhere in the town in the voluntary sector. So I would echo, having somebody from the voluntary sector would be useful, as long as they can be impartial, of course. 3-year funding has been on the agenda for so many years, I've lost count, because people need to know and plan for the future. They can't take on staff if they know that they've only got a 1-year contract. And I think it's something we should be looking at quite seriously to make sure that people have a future in the voluntary sector and that we're not letting down people that they support. I think that's very important. And it's a shame, again, there's no increase in the monies this year. Times are hard. People are finding it very difficult. You know, you've only got to put on the television today to find out who's going without heat, who's going without food, children, you know, going to school without a breakfast, you know, schools trying to do their best. And the voluntary sector, if it ever collapsed, goodness knows what we would do, because they hold us together. They really do. And if we didn't have the voluntary sector, we'd be in dire straits. So I really think if we could look at 3-year funding, I think it would be a really good way of actually making sure that the services are out there for the people who need them.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. That's the last of the speakers. David, probably a few points that you or maybe other colleagues want to sweep up from that.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion here. This is small one-off grants we're talking about here with community funding grants up to 15,000. So we would when there's talk of 3-year funding and things, I mean, that's not really what this is about. 20,000, whatever, but this is not what this is about. This is small one-off grants, so not for ongoing funding. The cross-party advisory group, I think, worked exceptionally well in the past year. And we'll look at that, but I think if you talk to your colleagues, so Councillor Al-Wahabi, for example, he took an active part in that, and it performed exceptionally well. And I've really pushed to ensure that we did continue to have that. Representation on the grants panel from the voluntary sector, I don't know. I mean, that's something maybe Jane could add to, but certainly we spoke with VIN, NCF, Northampton Community Foundation, and VCSE Assembly around this. So it's not as if this has come to or shouldn't come as a surprise to any of the sector, because they've got representation on that panel, for example. But Jane, whether you'd like to comment further on.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think with voluntary sector representation, one of the issues that we've got at the moment is with district councils, there was actually an organisation that was voluntary sector representation for those specific areas. So we've got 3 different organisations at the moment that would cover that for that kind of representation. Doesn't mean we can't go away and look at it and see if there's a possible way of doing it and talk to the VCSE Assembly about that. And as part of the new infrastructure contract, we could have a look at that as well. So if it's okay, I'll take it away and just see what's possible and just see how that would work.
Thank you, Jane. Some further points.
So community transport, yes, they can make an application to the grant. That's I think we had a few. I remember last year I was there in a viewing capacity at the panel, and I'm sure some came forward. So Councillor Harris, the answer is yes.
Thank you, David. Adam, you going to come in here?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I wanted to welcome the paper and thank Councillor Smith and the communities team for putting this together. I've experienced firsthand the value that grants of this kind can bring to the sporting and the performing arts sectors in West Northamptonshire. I've had the pleasure of referring a number of organisations to this scheme, some of whom have been successful in the work that they do with particularly vulnerable young people in giving them out of school activities to do and get out of home and have something enjoyable to focus on is absolutely fantastic. And actually having the flexibility of 1-year grants allows us to take into account the evolution of the voluntary sector, particularly in organisations of those kinds where you'll have grassroots startup organisations coming along year in, year out, who may need just that little bit of seed funding to get going and to support their local communities. So from that perspective, it works very well. And I'd encourage all councillors to continue referring people in their wards and beyond towards this scheme so that we can help as many people as possible.
Jolly good. Any further points? Anything else from the rest of the Cabinet? Comments on this? Matt?
What about now? Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I just want to support David and the paper, and just to give a bit of a wider context with the Voluntary Community Foundation and the wider sector involvement in things like the anti-poverty strategy and how we're distributing. We talked about the household support funds that we're receiving, and that sector. We had the anti-poverty oversight group last week, and I know Councillor Beardsworth was on the call, and they're speaking really, really highly about the way in which we're engaging with that sector as a council. And that's something that's really worthy of noting and yes, it's a difficult situation, and we're doing the best we can to help people, but it's been noted that we're going, I think, above and beyond to try and help and work with and listen to the voluntary sector when we are, meeting them in different areas of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So
Right, where Councillor Smith said it's up to 15, but it says 20, then it also says 20,000 and a penny plus. So that's why I assumed it was for a lot higher grants than only up to 20,000. So is that not correct? Am I reading that wrong?
I should just seek clarity. Jane, are you able to chip in there?
So as I understood it, it was up to 20,000, but I will check in case, because that plus, I'm not sure why that's there. So let me just go away and check and come back if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments at all? I think I'd support Matt's comments. I think, you know, we look at the horrible sort of situations we're facing residents through the cost of living crisis, and you look at the support we're managing to give to the wonderful voluntary sector that we've got across West Northants. I think we're doing it reasonably well because we're doing it in collaboration, aren't we? It's just a shame we haven't got more money. We'd love that, but it's about getting the best out of it, really. I too would support some involvement of voluntary sector, having seen that work so well on Northampton. I also was on that committee with Sally and Jane, but accepting that we're a different geography now, aren't we? So I think what we're going to do is support on vote as it is with the, you know, advisory panel makeup described. We'll continue to look at how we might introduce the voluntary sector. So with that in mind, draw your attention to those recommendations, including that one I've just outlined, section 3. Just ask you to confirm your agreement. Is that agreed? That's great. Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 9. This one's with Adam. It's the private sector housing enforcement and civil penalties policy. After a quick intro from Adam, we've just got one speaker, which is Councillor Bob Purser. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. It is a statutory duty of the council to publish a policy of this nature, and the recommendation is that we approve the private sector housing enforcement and civil penalties policy, which is attached to this report. Also involves a number of delegations so that minor amendments can be made as and when they become necessary. I think it's, I'd like to clarify the statement made in 5.2 of the report. There's a certain sort of chicken and egg debate to be had about how difficulties in social housing or the private rented sector come about. There's a real interplay of different factors, and certainly the difficulties that the housing market experiences at the moment, and the massive difficulties that people have in terms of becoming first-time buyers, means that the pressure on the private rented sector and social housing are both increasing, and that creates consequent pressures elsewhere, all of which means that having a private sector housing enforcement policy of this nature becomes ever more important. And the officers of this council have various statutory instruments that they can utilise to hold rogue landlords to account. They include the Housing Health and Safety Rating System, mandatory licensing of houses in multiple occupation or HIMOs. And in Northampton, in particular, there is also additional licensing of HIMOs that's used frequently, and we recently had cause to celebrate some successful prosecutions of rogue landlords. The government's also brought forward new legislative powers for our enforcement officers to use under the Housing and Planning Act, and those are summarised in 5.5 of the report. 6.3 outlines the nature of the enforcement activity that will be undertaking, and the principles that will be applied, setting out that the enforcement activity will be targeted, proportionate, fair and objective, transparent, consistent and accountable, all of which means that the public should know what their duties are and what they can expect from WNC. Part of the paper tonight covers off some of the changes to fees and charges made at full council during our budget meeting. It includes the removal of the previous early bird discounts for HMO licensing, so that you'll pay the same price at renewal as you do for a new license, and it also covers off some updates to amounts of civil penalty fines that council can levy upon rogue landlords. We also seek to update the legislative requirements for the minimum energy efficiency regime for private rented properties, and there are also some minor spelling and presentation issues that are corrected versus the previous iterations of this policy. But all in all, it's a positive step forward, and it equips our officers with the tools they need to tackle any rogue landlords out there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adam. It's very helpful. Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, Leader and Chair. Welcome this report very much, and really say more power to the team's elbow in this important work, because it is 20% of our housing. 33,000 people live in privately rented, 33,000 households live in private rented accommodation. And while some of it is excellent, there are parts of it that are not excellent, and where very important and effective enforcement is necessary. And that's often some of our poorest households live in some of the poorest accommodation. And it wouldn't be no surprise that our concerns about HIMOs is top of my list of that. Welcome the remove of early bird discounts, because our team needs all the resources it can have. And I'd want to seek assurance from Councillor Brown that we have the strength of team necessary to monitor and enforce all these 33,000 households. And whilst it's very welcome that we've had recent good prosecutions and significant fines for offenders, and I think people should take real note that as an authority, we have significant powers. The fact that we got to a situation where 14 landlords ended up being fined £400,000 suggests that we've got a problem. And I'd want to be assured that we are able to be proactive so that situations do not develop to the point at which such very significant enforcement action becomes necessary. And that, one of those houses was a house in my ward where a very significant fine had to be issued because of electrical safety issues. So a very dangerous house. That's a bad situation for us to have got to. So I would want to see a situation where, as a local authority, we had all private sector housing registered. We're not there yet. I think that's something we will need to look at in the future. I hope this is a document that will be continually looked at and revised, and people will go through, so that we do ensure that our private sector housing is as good as our public sector rented housing. And I just want to commend the work of our teams who do this work, because they've got a difficult job. They need full support. And I would hope the Cabinet would send, as part of the approval of this report, our thanks to that team and encouragement to carry on with the difficult work that they've got to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. And I'm sure we'd all join in thanking the teams for the work that they do, which is excellent. Adam, was there anything there you wanted to comment on?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Purser for his comments, and certainly echo the ethos of more power to the housing enforcement team's elbow. They do fantastic work. They're a very diligent team. They respond to every complaint that they receive. Do we have a team of sufficient strength to monitor 33,000 households? We never will. That's a significant private housing stock, the vast majority of which is of good standard and owned and managed by landlords who do their jobs proficiently and up to standard. We do have a team of sufficient size to respond to complaints as and when they come in. And as you'll have seen from the prosecutions, we operate effectively and with force where it's required. Are we being proactive? Councillor Purser asks. Yes, we are. We take a number of proactive approaches in seeking out properties that show signs of poor management, poor physical appearance, where there are complaints of antisocial behaviour. So there is a proactive approach taken by the team, and they certainly have my full support. And if any assistant director or director approaches me and asks for more support in terms of resource, then they will have that support. It's a vital sector in protecting the people who live in those homes, and that's who we have to remember in all of this. That whilst the landlords may on occasions misbehave, actually this is about the people living in the homes, and they're the people that we're seeking to protect through this policy.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody else, any further comments or questions on this one? No? In which case, as always, the recommendations of section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 10, for which Adam is again the portfolio holder. So he'll introduce the report after. Oh, I beg your pardon. No, it's Mike first, isn't it? I beg your pardon. Yeah, and then Adam will come in and comment. Replacement of the existing contract for the main housing management system. So over to Mike in a second, following which we've got one speaker, which is Councillor Hinch. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll let Adam comment on the specifics of the system and what it does, but effectively this has come to IT, which is an integral system as part of what we do. What we need to do here is do a relatively short-term extension to the existing software that we use in order to run quite a long-term project. It'll take about 2 years to run the procurement for changing the whole system, because as Adam will no doubt allude to, it's integral to everything that MPH does. So this is a short-term extension of the existing contract to allow for a wider procurement exercise to replace it. And the short-term extension is done under a framework agreement. So that guarantees us that we get that best value that we're looking for taxpayers.
Jolly good. Yeah, happy to. Yes, we'll take speaker first. So Nigel, Councillor Hinch, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. All I would like to say is that this is such an important project. I am a board member of MPH, and it is critical that as a board member, we're aware of what's happening. This is the core software that drives everything from the repair and maintenance to all of the issues that you've heard about before in terms of damp and mould and everything else. We've got statutory responsibilities that we need to take care of. All I can do, Mike, is to say, get on with it, because this is core to everything that MPH does and is required by the council to manage MPH and its performance. Thank you.
Jolly good. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you very much.
Leader, before we pass to the portfolio holder, just to say on that, obviously this is why we're doing this option. Rather than rushing through a procurement to meet the contract end date, we are staying with the status quo until to make sure we have adequate time. So in the short term, absolutely nothing will change.
That's brilliant, Mike. Thank you. Adam.
Thank you, Chairman. Much of it's been said. This is vital to the way that MPH operates, and of course we'll liaise fully with the chairman of the MPH board and the new chief executive of MPH when it comes to the procurement of the new system. The 2 years extra that we're taking is effectively, playing for time so that we can undertake procurement in an efficient and proper manner, and it will also allow us to align the procurement of that new system to the emerging housing strategy, which is beginning its implementation journey. So absolutely vital that we get this correct. Of course, we'll take MPH with us as we proceed, and look forward to reaching the conclusion of the procurement process.
Jolly good. Thank you, Adam. Anybody else, Cabinet, any comments, questions on this? No? In which case, recommendations of section 3 is ask you to confirm your agreement. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 11. This is with Phil. And following Phil's introduction, 2 speakers, Councillor Harris and Councillor Purser. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This paper provides an update on progress to date with the A43 Northampton to Kettering improvements, which is actually phase 3 of the scheme. The scheme, or this phase of the scheme, crosses into Northamptonshire. So this paper is seeking agreement to delegate authority to the Director of Place and Economy in liaison with me to agree the joint working arrangements with Northamptonshire Council. 83% of the scheme road length is actually in West Northamptonshire. So we will be the lead authority, and there will be a memorandum of understanding with Northamptonshire Council to ensure, amongst other things, suitable cost sharing and governance. Joint working in this way is common for such cross-border schemes and represents a fair and efficient way to progress the project. Previous A43 improvement phases were delivered by Northamptonshire County Council, and Annex A in the paper shows these on a map. Phase 3, Mr. Chairman, will extend the dual carriageway section to the Holcott Sywell roundabout. That's a very heavily congested junction, so hopefully we will improve the congestion in that particular area. The scheme forms part of the Department for Transport's major road network programme, and subject to the DFT confirming they are satisfied with the scheme business case, they will provide the majority of the scheme funding as detailed in section 7.1.3 of the report. As I say, the scheme will tackle an existing congestion problem that we have at the Sywell roundabout, as well as support growth in the corridor and improve active travel as well, because there's active travel provision. Subject to completion of the various processes, it is forecast that construction will begin in February 2026 with completion in April 2027. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Let's go to our two speakers, Councillor Harris. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is labelled improvements. That will be debatable for some. I don't think everybody will necessarily see this as improvements. One of the challenges with road developments like this, of course, is that yes, there may be a congestion problem there now. The challenge is that often creating a dual road to a roundabout just simply moves the problem further down the road, which could be the problem on the A43. So I would hope that that's considered in part of the building of the development plan for this. Obviously, there is a new further extension to the SUE that's going to take place on the right-hand side if you're leaving Northampton to that roundabout. So it'll clearly be beneficial for the developers there. Depending on access roads, which we haven't seen the full detail on those roads yet and where they will come in. So although there's congestion there now, that new development could contribute even further depending on what access looks like. Councillor Nunn will be aware that we had our sustainability meeting this morning, and there are two factors I think that really need to be considered carefully in the building of the development plan for this road. The first of which is the embodied carbon calculation. It refers to that in the document, and I note that we don't yet have it. I think that's really important that we have a good handle on that, because that potentially will contribute to our emission profile. You'll be aware that the council now has got a base emissions profile. Well, building a new road will add to that potentially, and I think we need to have a clear understanding on that. We also discussed this morning air quality issues. And we don't seem to have at the moment any sense of what air quality is like in that particular area of the A43. So I would certainly be advocating or recommending that we do get a handle on what air quality is like, because certainly we don't want to make it worse. We want to improve it for sure. So what I'm asking for effectively is that we have full information and full facts as a council, and that we join up the dots. So the business case must look at all angles. The historic view has always been that new roads is good for growth. I'm not entirely sure that there's a good evidence base for that, but we need to factor in other issues, health impacts, well-being, air quality, and so on. The IPCC climate report, which was published about 4 weeks ago, specifically mentioned road building as a major contributing factor to climate and climate change. So you've heard from me, you'll be fairly bored of me talking about this particular issue, I'm sure, but I think it's fairly important that we include this in the wider business case development. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Purser, Bob.
Yes, thank you. I think my comments follow on from Councillor Harris's points. I'm not clear that we've got a joined up transport strategy for West Northamptonshire yet. I think we need one. I think it needs to incorporate active travel as part of that strategy. So we need an overarching strategy so that we see how each particular scheme fits into that. I don't think we're there yet. I'm just concerned that this proposal will move the congestion up the road. And maybe that's to North Northamptonshire, but I think we should be concerned about that. Just squeezing the toothpaste up the tube is not resolving a transport issue. And I think we need to think very carefully about whether this scheme really is going to be value for money taken across the transport needs of West Northamptonshire and the other areas where investment needs to take place. I'd want strong assurances that we've got cost controls in place for this project. Our road schemes have a great ability to expand to take the amount of funding available to them. I think we need to make sure that this is kept within budget, so the budget we set is the one that is kept. I want to know how this scheme promotes active travel. How is this getting cars off the road, moving between where people are moving between Northampton and Kettering? I think we really need to understand that. I'm not sure we've got an active travel strategy for this part for West Northamptonshire, and I think we need one because we all need to be using our cars less and using alternative methods of transport. We aren't there yet, and I would hope that looking at this scheme gives us a bit of a spur to think about the hard questions we need to be asking ourselves on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Bill, some points to respond on?
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the fact that this can't be a road that then tries to funnel traffic into a problem further down the road. And this is a project that we inherited from the County Council, and it was all related to the growth and traffic flows relative to that growth in and around the Malton area. So that's why we've got it. But when we look strategically and look at the work that's been going on with connectivity studies through the sub-regional transport body, we are supportive of the proposals for this road eventually to be dualled all the way to Kettering. And we do support North Northampton achieving that goal. So, you know, while this does go some way, it accounts for the growth in the Malton area, and improves the situation at the Sywell roundabout. No, we don't want it to create further problems down the road, but we are supportive of extending it all the way to Kettering. And similarly, when you come to Northampton, what will really benefit this would be the Northern Orbital Road around Northampton. We've got massive problems with the A45 through Brackmills and around there, but there is no alternative to the A45 as a major road directly through to the M1, the main transport corridor, and all the major industrial estates and buildings down there. So the Northern Orbital will certainly work well in conjunction with this development. So yeah, it is a bit out on a limb, but in the overall strategy, we're seeking to work with North Northants and ourselves to develop further road links that will bring it the benefits wider across the board. I hear all the issues about carbon, air quality, and etc., and I will raise that issue with officers to ensure that those things are taken into account within the business case. And when it comes down to costs, this is obviously DFT funded, and we will be very much on top of the costs, as DFT I'm sure will be too. So we will be working with them, and we will be doing what we can to ensure that everything is within budget and delivered to time. And finally, Mr. Chairman, Active travel, no, we don't have an active travel strategy as yet. It's currently being worked on. Once that strategy is available and we've got all the local walking and cycling infrastructure plans in place, that strategy will of course feed into an overall transport strategy for West Northamptonshire. But this scheme itself does help by delivering active travel corridor along the route as far as it goes. So that is a bit of a benefit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, any comments or questions on this? Like all these reports, this is not the first time we've seen it this evening. We've discussed this for hours and hours and hours, seen drafts, reports, gone through it and so on. So we arrive at these meetings to take a public decision on something we've given careful consideration to. I wonder about the increase in traffic. I think there's lots more growth to come in that area. My hope is, and we did mention at the sustainability meeting today, as Jonathan says, that we should have before and after monitoring. I do think that a lot of our hotspots for pollution are where traffic is stationary. The Cock Hotel, various other St Michael's Road, areas like that. So it'll be interesting to see. Just before we go to the vote, Adam, you're going to come in with a comment there.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to Councillor Lowett for acknowledging the active travel corridor that will be created by this. But I think it's absolutely essential that when we have an opportunity to deliver infrastructure where housing's been delivered, that we take it, because one of the main objections to new housing developments coming forward from local residents is that, well, we never get the infrastructure to go alongside the housing. This is a case where the infrastructure is being delivered. So let's go for it, and that way try and restore a bit of the public's faith that where we deliver new housing, which is desperately needed, that infrastructure will indeed follow.
Jolly good. No further comments? No? Okay. In which case, as always, the recommendations are at section 3. Just ask you to confirm your agreement. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Again, staying with Phil, this takes us on to item 12. This is bus subsidy budget. Confirming a budget amendment. We have 2 speakers after Phil summarised this. The first one is Councillor Hollandale and then Councillor Harris. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This paper is basically implementing the motion as part of the budget meeting passed at council on the 22nd of February by requesting it, where we requested the approval for the retention of the £215,000 of budget that was due to be removed from the council's bus subsidy budget. Rather than revert to the £100,000 base budget, instead there will be a £315,000 budget for 23-24. This, along with other grants we expect to receive from the government, will enable existing supported bus services to continue. And section 7.7.1 of the report lists those services currently supported that we will continue to support. The additional 215,000 comes out of the contingency fund, and the council does have a statutory duty to secure the provision of such passenger transport services it considers appropriate to secure to meet any public transport requirements within its area, which in our view would not be met by any other means. Most bus services in the area operate commercially without the need for public subsidy. Bus services are under a lot of pressure, however, and the paper highlights the ongoing impact from the pandemic and changes in travel behaviour impacting demand and issues with fuel costs and driver shortages affecting the supply of service. The council needs to take a much broader look at how it supports public transport for the long term, and we have commissioned consultants to undertake a bus review. I understand that the report is fairly imminent now, and this review will inform a report to Cabinet and Council in the summer with recommendations on a new policy for supporting bus services. But in the meantime, we will continue to support the services we're currently subsidising. And of course, any new policy that we adopt, strategy, whatever, will be subject to consultation and agreement through the democratic process. So we're at the start of the process of reviewing what we do, how we do it, and put in place a strategy for the future. And this report enables us to keep the services going that we're currently keeping going until such time as that is delivered.
Thank you, Phil. That's great. So 2 speakers in. First of all, Councillor Holland-Delamain. Keith, over to you.
Thank you. I welcome the fact that the funding has temporarily been extended. Just a question as a member of the cross-party bus strategy group, when will we be seeing a copy of that report so we can input into it? Because one of the key concerns I have is, as I've previously mentioned, this strategy is part of a wider transport strategy that we need. We've already mentioned active travel. We've already know the pressures on home school transport, hospital transport, workforce transport, tourism, etc. This is part of an overall strategy that we need as a local area to best serve our communities, but also be most cost effective and environmentally friendly for our areas. Sometimes with these subsidies, there is a concern that sometimes it may not be the most cost effective way of delivering. Community transport, as been previously mentioned, is sometimes the most adaptable to the needs of the actual community. So my concern is we're still waiting for a copy of the report. We last met as a cross-party bus strategy group in December. It's now nearly 4 months, 5 months since we last met. And it really, as a group, we want to help shape that cross-party vision for an integrated transport strategy, and buses in particular as part of that. So please talk to the cross-party group. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And our second speaker, Councillor Harris. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps a rarity for me. A heartfelt thank you, actually, to both Council and to Cabinet, assuming that Cabinet agrees to support this budget amendment this evening. The heartfelt thank you is on behalf of the residents in my ward, and clearly the benefits here are much, much wider for those other subsidised routes. I think it's important that we continually remind ourselves, I mentioned the emerging work of the LAPS in rural areas, specifically about the isolation issues. So whatever the future looks like for support of public transport in the future from the Council's point of view, I really hope that that lands firmly in people's mindsets, because it is a major issue for many. I would echo some of the comments also made by Councillor Holland-Delamain earlier on. It's been a while since the bus group has met. I think we expected the output of that report much sooner, so I'm glad to hear that it's fairly imminent. And I hope that the bus group can meet fairly swiftly once that report is published and get the opportunity to fully debate and discuss and have input to those issues. I'm also reassured to hear that Councillor Larratt has mentioned that there will be a public consultation when we get to that stage. There must be full transparency on any emerging proposals. It's such a key area for people in rural communities, and we must do all that we can to make sure that we keep that in the front of our minds. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Some comments, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bus report that we've commissioned, I haven't seen it. It came back and our officers felt there was a bit more work that needed to properly inform us. The consultants have been back and undertaken that further work, and I believe that the revised report has now been received or is been seen in draft and is now being confirmed before it comes officially. And as I said before, when we last met, the bus group last met, We said we would meet as and when we've got that report and that report is received and available. That is still the intention. As soon as we get that report, it will come, it's for one of its first ports of call will be to the working group, and we will have that meeting as soon as we can for having received it. And I fully understand and accept that buses are one part of a big jigsaw when it comes to transport, whether it's cars, whether it's bikes, whether it's road haulage transport, whether it's rail, whatever, long distance coaches, everything. It's a massive, massive area, and it's really putting together a big jigsaw for what suits our residents here in West Northamptonshire, Mr. Chairman. So I do support the continuance of these services, and I fully agree that there are wider issues than Jonathan's referred to, isolation, and all those things have got to be taken into account when we consider the strategy going forward. So I look forward to receiving the report, having the meeting of the working group, and taking things forward from them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Adam.
Thank you, Chairman. Echo Councillor Harris's sentiments on this, not least because one of the subsidised routes runs through Rothersthorpe and Tattershall in my ward, but also because as someone who hasn't been able to drive at various times in my past because I've suffered from epileptic seizures, I know just what the value is of having a rural bus route to fall back on. These are the services that mean that the elderly person can go to a hospital appointment, or the young student can attend a college in Northampton, and it just helps to mitigate that sense of rural isolation that would otherwise have a really profound effect on lives that may not be noticed by people outside of those households, but is nonetheless very, very real and hold people back in life. So the more we can do of this sort of thing, the better. And I hope that this will be embedded into our budgets for a long time to come.
Thanks, Adam.
I
Do you want to come in again, Phil?
totally agree with Adam now. It does play a vital, vitally important role within the communities, as we know, Chairman, through the loss of the service in Collingtree. Collingtree is now an island when it comes to public transport. So I do totally agree with everything Adam said.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? No. Okay, thank you, everybody. Recommendations as always, section 3. Can I just ask you, confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 13. This is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman report. 2 portfolio holders have responsibility here. We'll hear in a moment from Mike in terms of, if you like, the process around this sort of complaint approach, and then secondly from Fiona on the specifics that the Ombudsman's report is referring to. After which we have 2 speakers, that's Councillor Randall and Councillor Beardsworth. So Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This report falls partly within my directorate because obviously complaints and ombudsman complaints is a part of what we do. Obviously, we seek all of the time to get it right first time and get it right first time. And there's thousands of instances of when we do that. But unfortunately, in this case, we haven't. And we've fully accepted the findings of this report. As this sits within Councillor Baker's directorate, she's more familiar, maybe could give us perhaps a bit wider background into this and the specifics in this case. So, Chairman, with your indulgence, I'll pass to Councillor Baker.
Thanks, Mike. Fiona.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Hallam. As you can imagine, this particular area of work takes up an awful lot of my time as a portfolio holder, looking at ways that all the time that we can make it better. And it is a long job, so I won't put that aside. It is a long job. This report informs Cabinet of the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman published findings in relation to a complaint about special educational needs, provision, education, health and care plans. The Council is obliged to publish a report that is seen as being of public interest and highlights a particular issue that may affect more than one person or family. The Council is disappointed to receive these findings, but has apologised for the shortcomings identified in this case to the family. These cases highlight the difficulty we can face putting in the right support and educational placement to meet the needs of complex children. The council tries to constantly balance those needs, the expectation of parents, the places available, and the cost of meeting those needs and wishes. While we successfully find suitable SEND placements and support for over 2,500 children each year, nationally, the numbers of children needing support is rising rapidly each year, and their needs are becoming far more complex. We expect the West North Hants cohort to rise by 25% from 2,600 now to 3,168 by 2025. There is also a rising national crisis in attracting, recruiting, and retaining educational psychologists to undertake EHCP assessments. All councils are seeing the increased use of agency staff who cost far more and choose their working patterns. This further worsens the pressure on the budgets too, borne out by a meeting I recently attended last week of the F40 group, which is the lowest number of lowest funded councils in the country. And they are all in the same position as us and all having this difficulty. So we will be lobbying government together. We are lobbying very hard and try to address these issues nationally and make sure we can do what is right by children in the face of increasing deficits on high needs budgets. This no way detracts from the issues highlighted in the LGSO report and experienced by this family. We are sharing learnings with our staff and with our regional colleagues who face similar challenges and sometimes criticism by the LGSO. The council has also provided the LGSO with confirmation on its approved budgets and timescales for increasing the number of SEND places. A payment and apology were also issued to the parents who raised the complaint. As a council, we recognise we must do better. We want all children to have the best start in life and to receive an education that will ensure they have a better outcome in future life. We are working hard to progress our improvement plan. This includes opening new units within the attached schools, the planned opening of a new 250-place special school for special educational needs complex children and is due to open in September 2025. Bringing in external resource to help us speed up EHCP assessments, the introduction of our new SEND ranges, which provide a set standard for each child or young person in education, setting to better outline what support is needed based on children's individual needs and behaviours. In addition, the council continues to look at all complaints and concerns received on an individual basis and work with parents and schools to find a suitable solution to often very specific or complex needs. As well as this, we're hosting a series of engagement workshops with parents, carers and professionals during April and May to hear views and feedback of SEND services to support in the development of our 3-year SEND strategy. We hope this will mean we can develop and progress solutions that will make a difference for our children and young people now as well as in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fiona. Right, so 2 speakers. First, Councillor Randall. Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. If we have children that need one-to-one care, then that's what we need to be supplying. A quote that we've been using for many years is "every child matters," and we really need to make sure that they feel like they all matter. In the report that was published online on the 30th of March, it was quite shocking to read that a primary age school autistic child who has difficulty communicating their wishes and needs was left isolated from their peers in a separate room because the school said it couldn't meet their needs. And as a result, they weren't learning, they were regressing in their personal development and self-harming. Even though the council were aware, they did not amend that child's EHC plan for nearly 3 months. We are failing children and we can't allow this to continue. We've been acting unlawfully in many cases, and we have seen that with the amount of cases that have gone to tribunal and have been upheld. We need to work with parents, not against them. We understand there are staff shortages and the pressures that they are working under, but we need a system that even on the council's worst day, we do not leave a child in an unsuitable environment. A new specialist school, like you've alluded to, will be open in 2025. And I really hope that there is data on every age and need of our SEND children to ensure that we have suitable provision for all of our SEND children. And Councillor Baker, as Cabinet Member for Children, what are you doing to make sure improvements are being made? You've been saying for months that you are lobbying government, but it seems to be falling on deaf ears. We don't want to find ourselves in situations like this again. So what are you doing about these children that we are failing? And I don't mean in the future, I mean today, now. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. One more speaker, Councillor Beardsworth. Sally?
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, this report doesn't tell us an awful lot about the child, Jay. We do not know what age the child is, or we don't know if it had been assessed before. We don't know if this was a reassessment. So a lot of it is unknown. But the things we do know is it's taken 2 years to get this child sorted and into education. 2 years of a child's life is huge, of whatever age, to be out of education, away from the support that the school would give and the help that they can give the parents to assess the needs of that child, because they are the professionals. It must be distressing for the portfolio holder, I'm sure it is. And I know she does her best and it's not always easy. And I realise that you're dealing with an awful lot of children that need this sort of care. And I don't want to damn what you do, because I think you do a good job. Most of the time, this is one time you failed one child. Hopefully now lessons have been learned and this won't be happening again. But we do have to protect the children in our care, and I know that you do most of the time, and this is a one-off situation. And as I say, we're not aware of all the facts behind it because the report doesn't give us the information to say whether this child has needed an assessment to go to school, or whether it was a further assessment, or whether it needed extra care at certain things. But we must make sure that our SEND children do have the care, and I'm sure the portfolio agrees with me that everything will be done that can be done to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Fiona, is there anything you wanted to comment on or respond there, or? No, okay, anybody else want to comment at all? There can't be anything more important to anybody to want to do to look after children who have needs and so on. It's a challenging situation. We're seeing an annual 25% growth in the number of children who require special special educational needs. There are schools extensions opening, the new school coming and so on. It's just hugely frustrating to keep up with the demands. We're trying hard to continue to recruit. It's sad also that the staff who have choices in where they work, they get a battering on social media, and we feel now that we've got them doing their best, and there's no lack of commitment from you, Fiona, from me, or from any others at all, really. But it's naturally disappointing when all good efforts also mean there are children being let down. Were you signalling there because you wanted to comment still? Yeah, over to you, Fiona.
I was just going to say something I probably didn't mention before, but when children are out of school, we make every effort to put in a tutor for them at home. It won't be full time like being in school, and obviously no way replaces from the mixing with peers at school, which we all want them to do. And sometimes that's the best that we can do at the time. I do assure everybody that I do work exceedingly hard. I do not want any child to be failed, but it is really quite difficult to find the right placement for some children, and it does take a lot of time and effort. And I do feel that we need to support our team in this area as much as we possibly can in order for them to come in the morning, sit behind their desk and actually do their work, because continually saying that they're doing a bad job is actually encouraging people to leave our service, which is not helping us to improve this situation. I try my best to support them as much as I can. I am a critical friend, as any in that team would tell you. I'm often outraged or annoyed about various things, but we talk through about how we can move them forward. But I do think that we need to support this team if we're going to hope to carry out all of the things that we've got on our list here that we want to do for them through the next 6 months.
Thanks, Fiona. Adam, you're going to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Understandably, any issue involving children is deeply emotive, and all of us would recognise that one failure of the system is one too many. But at the same time, I recognise the fact that this is a service that provides for the needs of, I think, over 3,000 children who have special educational needs. And you and I, Chairman, work with Councillor Baker very, very closely. We have regular meetings with her and with the relevant director, and two more committed, harder working people you could not hope to meet. I have absolutely zero doubt that Councillor Baker has the best interests of West Northamptonshire's children at heart, that she holds her officers and her department fully to account. And if I was ever to have need to call upon the service, I have no doubt that we have the people in place who would go to every length to provide the necessary service to my son and to anybody's children within West Northamptonshire. Unfortunately, with the sheer volume of work that people have to go through, there will be occasions where things aren't quite up to scratch, but we learn the lessons, we accept the findings of the Ombudsman, and we strive to do better in future.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody else, any comments or questions on this one? No. Okay. All right. In which case, as usual, recommendations at section 3. Just ask you to confirm your agreement. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, takes us on to item 14. This is the SACRA report, which is with Fiona. Following your introduction, Fiona, we have one speaker, which is Councillor Holland D'Alembert. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a report that I've regularly brought to, I think in the past, to council, but our legal people told us that it actually didn't need to go to council. It was a reoccurring report that could come to cabinet. So what it does is we are required to actually maintain a system that we know that schools are teaching religious education in all schools. This is a duty that is forced, that is not forced, but is placed upon the council to see that this is carried out. To this end, in normal situations, I've brought this report forward, and it's just been an agreed report that we do all agree that we do hold this schools to account to ensure that religious education is taught in schools. But I was disappointed to read that although we set up a board, there is some failings in the board, and whether it's people leaving or people not being replaced or whatever, I'm unsure as to what that is, but I will find out. But it says in the report on item 2.1 that we're still, I'm going to put my glasses on for this bit, sorry. We're still without an advisor. So RE data is not collected or subsequently monitored from the schools. So I have spoken to our chief executive today about this, and we will be putting plans in place to take that role over, because we cannot have that monitoring not taking place in the future. So I think that's probably all there is to say about it. I know that our Deputy Lord Lieutenant is on the board of this, Marcia Walker, and she holds it very much to heart. So I think it's our duty to support them in this way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. So our speaker is Keith. Keith, over to you.
Just to say I'm a member of the SACRI. It's definitely just thank all the staff for all the work they've done, in particular for Marcia for leading the county-wide SACRI. I think that's one of the challenges that we've got with the SACRI, that it is cross-county, that it is a shared service between West and North. And part of the challenge has been agreeing to the post that basically is paid for 50-50 by two different councils. I've been sitting on the Constitution group that's been looking at how we implement legally the agreements for West North Hants, but of course that's replicated for the North. So the whole process, whereas previously it was a county-wide county council, this is one of the odd occasions where that separation has actually created more work. So I really do thank the staff who have been trying their best to navigate the different councils to try and get things progressed. And I do look forward to probably talking to Fiona about how we can best support that team to make sure that we get proper information for the West area. And again, it's a challenge, and I do recognise even when they do recruit the actual person, it'll be a 2-day-a-week job. So it's a part-time job as well. So that will be a challenge. Most of the groups that are on the SACRI are county-wide. So that's another challenge as well in terms of cooperating and working across two councils. Would also say that the capacity within SACRI has been diminished due to COVID, and there's been a lot of rebuilding in rebuilding that group. So thanks to the officers who've worked their best, and to Marcia, but would be grateful for extra support to get us legal.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you. And your comments helpful. Adam, you're going to comment, I think.
Thank you, Chairman, and yeah, important comments from both Councillor Holland-Delamere and Councillor Baker about the areas that maybe we need to focus on just to improve this service. But it is one of undoubted value. I mean, RE or religious studies was not my favourite subject at school, I must admit, but I do feel that it continues to benefit me to this day, because spirituality and religion bring great benefits to society. And if we can implement and do implement a high quality provision of religious education in our schools, then there really is no better antidote to bigotry or discrimination between faith groups than having that understanding of each other's customs and faiths and practices. So long may this continue, and with the suggested recommendations from Councillor Holland-Delamere and Councillor Baker, I think we can make great strides in continuing the good work that's gone before.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. Any other comments? Fiona, did you want to come back on anything at all that was mentioned there?
I was just going to say, I think that having had a very quick conversation with our Chief Executive, Anna, earlier, I think we need to have a probably more in-depth conversation about what happens, but we're well used to negotiating with the North, so that we will take that on board and come up with a solution. Thank you.
Jolly good. Thank you. Any other comments or queries? We're being asked to note, or rather to report, to receive this report as recommended at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 15, the first of 2 reports of this type with Mike. This is on consolidating printers into a single contract. We've no speakers on this one, Mike, so over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Won't keep you long. I'm sure everyone likes to see reports that detail 6-figure savings over multiple years, and this is one. Clearly bringing together the councils is one of the reasons behind that saving, but there are a couple of others as well. One is that we will need far fewer of these machines because we've done some office consolidation, which every sort of company post-pandemic has also done. The other is volumes through the machines are generally down as well because of our ways of working and our post-pandemic ways in which we've changed the way in which we work. We're also looking to capital buy these units outright, which is actually better value over the course of a 5-year term than it is to lease them. And clearly, if we were to lease them, there's an interest payment on that. And actually, it is far better. If we did need to borrow money, it's far better to borrow it ourselves than it is to borrow it for a third-party corporation who wouldn't get access to the same rates. So really simple report and a really good saving to deliver. Happy to present it.
Jolly good. Anybody, any questions on this at all? No, in which case, the recommendations at section 3, can we confirm agreement? Is that agreed? That's great. Thank you. Similarly, Mike, you have no speakers on item 16, which is the consolidation of phone lines into a single contractor.
Absolutely. So, same thing again. Not delivering as significant a saving on this one, but a more modest saving. But just to say, I know we've had talk and I've mentioned it as well about changing the telephony system. This is not the telephony system. That is a separate item that you'll see coming down track. This is the actual physical phone lines that we hold. So we consolidate those together under one contract and make a more modest saving. But all of the details is in the report. But just like caveat that it's not the actual system where you ring up and they log a call or any of that stuff. It's simply the 01604s or the 01327s. It's the physical lines. Happy to present it.
Thank you, Mike. Adam, you got a comment?
Very briefly, Chairman, consolidating printers into a single contract and consolidating phone lines into a single contract are paper titles that won't bring people into the council chamber in their droves, but they do represent transformation in action. And as Councillor Hallam said in presenting this previous report, a six-figure saving, and in this case, a 5-figure saving each year, every year, moving into the future, represents considerable progress and strengthens the argument for unitary councils and delivering better services more efficiently for the people of West Northamptonshire.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Adam. Any other comments, questions on this? No. Okay, so recommendations to approve this are at section 3. Can we confirm that? Is that agreed? Very good. Thank you very much indeed. That was our last item. Thanks to everybody for their attendance. Everybody who's put work into the reports, and we wish you a good night. Thank you.